The next time I watch a WNBA game will be the first time I watch a WNBA game.
A lot of people talk about stand-up comedy nowadays. To say the art form has become very popular over the last 5 years would be an understatement. However, if you talk about stand-up comedy long enough, there is one name that is bound to come up through sheer tyranny of will. His name is
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald.
Who is Norm Macdonald? Some people describe him as the most unique comedic voice of all time, but if you ask Norm to talk about himself, he'd adamantly proclaim he's just an old chunk of coal. By the end of this video, you will know exactly who Norm Macdonald is, where he came from, some of the amazing work he's done, and what makes his style of comedy so unique. This is Norm Macdonald, the greatest comedian to ever live. On October 17, 1959, Norman Jean Macdonald was born in Quebec City within Quebec, Canada. His father, who owned a doghouse, was Percy Macdonald, and his mother was Fern Macdonald. He also had an older brother named Neil Macdonald, who was born 2 years before him. Both of his parents worked as real heroes, and by that I mean they were English teachers. Norm attended Quebec High School when he was a young man until his family moved to Ottawa, Ontario. It was at this time he transferred to Gloucester High School. Norm has claimed that he dropped out of high school at 16 years old, but he actually graduated 2 years early based on his extreme intellect and cognitive aptitude. It is confirmed that after attending high school, Norm went on to study philosophy and mathematics at Carleton University for a bit until he decided to drop out. What a gyp that turned out to be. Norm also attended Algonquin's College, with the core focus being journalism and television broadcasting, similar to his brother Neil. Around this time, Norm had done several different manual labor jobs in this time at Algonquin. In 1985, Norm decided to try stand-up comedy for the very first time at Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club in Ottawa.
You ever played the lotteries?
Yeah.
Man, I never played them. But you ever get a lottery ticket, somebody give it to you as a gift, like for Christmas or something? I always thought that was the weirdest gift to give somebody, a lottery ticket, you know? So here you go. Nothing. That's nothing at all there. From me to you, a worthless hunk of cardboard.
Unfortunately for Norm, he didn't feel great about his first time on stage, so much so that he actually ran out of the club and said he would never do stand-up ever again. Thankfully, the club's owner, Howard Wagman, had convinced him he had talent for the craft and that he should come back and continue to improve. After Norm continued to do spots in Ottawa and saw his stage presence and confidence continue to grow, he found himself regularly appearing at amateur nights at Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club.
So getting down here, I got a lift down here because I don't know how to drive. You know, I can't drive. I gotta get my license. You know, gotta get my driver's license so I can go. You know, I can have ID and stuff. You know, because I have no good ID. All my ID stinks. You need a driver's license for ID, you know, or something, a credit card or something, you know. You ever try to cash a check with that little card that comes with the wallet? They just look at you, you know.
Some of Norm's comedic influences include Bob Newhart, Sam Kinison, Rodney Dangerfield, and many more. He quickly became a local favorite because of his keen observations and his incredibly dry, sarcastic delivery. Within 6 months, he was granted the opportunity to perform at Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in 1986, located in Montreal, Quebec. Norm did so well that he was immediately contacted by the Fortune 500 company Mangrade.
100% cast iron.
I'm just kidding. Norm did so well he started to catch fire and found himself gaining publicity from the Montreal Gazette, where he was considered as one of the country's hottest comics. Eventually, as Norm continued to grow and develop as a comedian, he received an opportunity to perform as a contestant on the show Star Search.
I smoked ever since I was a kid, so it was kind of tough for me, you know. I remember once I was 8 years old, little kid, behind my garage, sneaking a cigarette back there, and my dad caught me. He hauled me in. I thought I was in for the strapping of my life, you know. What he did is he pulled out a big cigar. Must have been half the size of my arm, this giant cigar. Stuck it in my mouth, lit it up, made me smoke it. All the way through, right to the end. That's when I started smoking cigars real heavy.
And more notably, he made his late-night debut on Late Night with David Letterman.
You seen these new sports on the TV where they'll try to combine two sports together and make up a new sport? You know, like a guy will run a 100-yard dash and then fish.
David Letterman instantly took a liking to Norm and went on the record saying if we could have, we would have had Norm on every week. David Letterman has gone on the record many times as well talking about Norm Macdonald and saying nothing short of exceptional things about him.
I love Norm, and my guess is, what I know of Norm is that he may not be working hard.
No.
But what he has is the same result as somebody who's worked hard.
Yes, yeah.
Which is, again, enviable, admirable, but God, he makes me laugh.
Letterman had also gone on to say how intelligent Norm was and how he was always the smartest guy in the room pretending to be the dumbest. However, along with these great opportunities for Norm, struck tragedy for the Macdonald family, because on October 29, 1990, Norm's father, Percy Macdonald, courageously waged a battle against heart disease that resulted in a draw. As sad as this news was for Norm, in 1992, he had to soldier on because he became a writer for the one and only season of The Dennis Miller Show. And after that, he was hired to be a writer for Roseanne Barr's show, Roseanne. He wrote for the show during the 1992 and 1993 season, and he eventually left the show to take part in one of Norm's most iconic roles in all of show business. It is undoubtedly one of the highlights of his comedic career.
Too bad that you had to get caught. That's not like you to lose face.
After many years of hard work and honing his craft of stand-up comedy, in 1993, Norm Macdonald joined the cast at NBC's Saturday Night Live, where he went on to do legendary impressions of Larry King, Burt Reynolds, David Letterman, Bob Dole, and many more. Then the following year, during the 20th season of SNL, Norm became the anchor on the satire news segment known as Weekend Update. Norm really stood out in this role because his style of humor was incredibly unpredictable, and it seemed as if there was no line he was not willing to cross. It didn't matter what the topic was either. Ellen DeGeneres being gay, prison, the Clintons. If Norm saw something funny within the topic, he would go right for the throat and he would not hold back. As mentioned earlier, Norm always had a dry and deadpan delivery within his stand-up comedy act, and there was absolutely no shortage of that in his time on Weekend Update.
Here we see the president and the first bitch. Jonathan Schmitz, the Jenny Jones guest who killed his secret gay admirer because of his fear and hatred of homosexuality, has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. Well, I guess that plan backfired, huh? And now it's time for Weekend Update's movie reviews. This week I saw Interview with the Vampire, and here's my review. Not gay enough.
To say that Norm took pride and basked in a joke not being received well by the audience would be an understatement. In fact, in some instances, it almost appeared that when the audience didn't like a joke, Norm enjoyed it even more than if they had all laughed in the first place.
O.J. Simpson's new fitness video was released this week, and hitting the shelves next week, Simpson's newest video, Dorf on Stalking. The crowd is torn.
If there's one word that could be used to describe Norm Macdonald on Weekend Update, I believe the most appropriate word would be fearless. Now, controversy was certainly Norm's cup of tea, but there was a string of controversial jokes that led to Norm being in hot water with Saturday Night Live management. The O.J. Simpson jokes. Norm did not shy away from jokes at the expense of alleged murderer O.J. Simpson, and it got so out of hand that Norm was supposedly told by Don Ohlmeyer, who was a friend of O.J. Simpson, to cool it with the O.J. Simpson jokes. As you can probably predict, Norm took this request and did what he does best.
Well, it is finally official. Murder is legal in the state of California. Meanwhile, in Washington, Mayor Marion Barry praised the verdict as, quote, wise and just. And he called upon people of all races to please get him some crack.
It's hotly contested why Norm was fired from Saturday Night Live, but it is reasonable to assume that Don Ohlmeyer's frustration with Norm led to his firing from Weekend Update in 1997. I mean, this guy was a real jerk. However, when Norm was fired, The reason he was given was because of low ratings and for the fact that Norm, in their eyes, just simply wasn't funny enough. Norm Macdonald went on David Letterman's show and discussed this firing, and David Letterman was very vocal about how unfunny SNL had become over the years.
No, you didn't get fired.
Yeah, they fired me.
No, they didn't fire you.
No, I'm serious. I talked to a guy that said I'm fired. This guy, Don Ohlmeyer, turns out to be the president.
Yeah, now I know Don Ohlmeyer, and
Yeah.
just between you and me, he's an idiot.
Oh. So he goes, oh yeah, I'm firing you there from the show. And then I said, oh, that's not good. You know? And then I said, why is that now? And he goes, oh, you're not funny.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, Lord, that's even worse news, you know?
Norm also discussed his firing on the Howard Stern show, where Howard Stern echoed a lot of the criticisms that David Letterman also said. To further support the theory that Norm was fired for the OJ jokes, Jim Downey, a longtime writer for Saturday Night Live, was credited for writing a bulk of the OJ jokes that Norm read on Weekend Update, and he was also fired at the same time that Norm was. Whether or not this was a coincidence is still up for discussion, but a sizable portion of comedy fans tend to lean towards the idea that Norm was canned from Weekend Update for the constant jokes about O.J. Simpson. However, Norm stayed on as a cast member for a while, and he adamantly disliked performing in the show's regular sketches. Then on February 28, 1998, performed in one final sketch before his exit from Saturday Night Live as a whole. After Norm's exit from the show, he eventually shot a movie called Dirty Work where he was the lead actor, and this was Norm's big movie. Things got extremely petty because Don Ohlmeyer ordered NBC to not air any advertisements for Dirty Work out of retaliation for Norm's appearances on the David Letterman show and the Howard Stern show because he viewed it as disparaging to their brand. Luckily, Ohlmeyer's boss at NBC, Robert Wright, took issue with this and reversed the order immediately. Norm, to say the least, was furious about Ohlmeyer's conduct towards him, calling him a liar and a thug while insisting he had no ill will towards him and that the only people who took shots at him were Stern and Letterman. After all this, the Saturday Night Live debacle had come to a halt, or so the Germans would have us believe. In October 23, 1999, to the surprise of everyone, Norm Macdonald was invited back to Saturday Night Live to host the show. From what you've heard about Norm thus far, I think you know where this is going. I couldn't say it better than Norm, so let me just play part of the monologue for you.
When the people here asked me to do the show, I gotta say, I felt kind of weird, I don't know if you remember this, but I used to actually be on this show, They fired me because they said that I wasn't funny, But now, this is the weird part, right? It's only a year and a half later, and now they asked me to host the show. Because a year and a half, let's face it, is not enough time for a dude to learn how to be funny. Then it occurred to me, I haven't gotten funnier. The show has gotten really bad. So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later.
This marked a legendary moment in comedy where Norm once again demonstrated his fearlessness and his ability to be cutthroat while also keeping the crowd laughing the entire time he does it. After this monologue, Norm Macdonald became infamous, and it truly felt like he was on top of the world of comedy.
So sad that you're not as smart as you thought you were in the first place.
I mentioned Dirty Work in the previous section regarding the Saturday Night Live drama, but the movie itself was a very special time for Norm in his career. Dirty Work was a film about Norm that was shot by dear friend and comedian Bob Saget, and this is one of the first movies where Norm had played a significant role. Before Dirty Work, the only other movies we had seen him in was Billy Madison and The People vs. Larry Flint, so this movie was the turning point for Norm's career and led him to becoming the biggest movie star in all of show business, or so the Germans would have us believe. But seriously, this was an awesome movie for Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, and it also ended up being a special moment for them because it was the last film that had featured Chris Farley, one of the funniest men who ever lived, who passed away in 1997. Dirty Work ended up being dedicated to Chris and his family. When it came to acting in movies, Norm would always say,
So anyways, he goes, I put you in a movie, man. I need a guy to... And he was going to
give me a big part.
Right.
So I was like, no, don't do that. Like, I can't act. And he's like, don't worry about it. I go, seriously, Milos, I don't want you to give me a big part.
But besides that, he had always found himself being an extra in Adam Sandler's movies based on the fact that Sandler is a big believer in making movies with his friends that he finds funny, many of whom include former SNL cast members such as David Spade, Chris Rock, Rob Schneider, and not to mention Norm himself. Then in 1999, Norm starred in his very own sitcom, The Norm Show, also known as Norm, for 3 seasons. The show featured Artie Lang, Laurie Metcalf, and Ian Gomez. The Norm Show also featured Norm Macdonald, where he played Norm.
But I had a TV show once, Norm. I played Norm. Now I have him on my show, The Norm Show. I played Norm.
And the character he plays is a washed-up hockey player that has a severe gambling addiction. Norm took this role very seriously and gambled for many years to perfect his craft and become the best actor he could for this role. Despite only airing 3 seasons, The Norm Show was very well received by viewers because of the sarcastic wit and dry humor displayed in typical Norm Macdonald fashion. However, the show struggled to maintain a constant viewership based on the network's decision to constantly shift the days and time slots that new episodes would air. This lack of consistency with network scheduling led to a decrease in ratings and viewership, which ultimately led to the show ending on April 6, 2001. Probably the worst tragedy to ever take place in the year 2001. Reminds me of that other tragedy.
Where they took down the towers?
Yeah, all the stories came crashing down, you know. A lot like when we tried to write on The Norm Show. We couldn't... We try to write stories and it all come crashing down.
Despite the loss of his sitcom Norm in 2011, where he played Norm, he found his way back on TV for the sports show with Norm Macdonald. This show was absolutely wild in the greatest possible way. Norm used this show as a way to bring his irreverent style of comedy into the wide world of sports. If you think any of the clips I've showed you so far are out of pocket, this show was a sledgehammer of exactly that type of humor.
Hey, WNBA, I got an idea that'll sell some tickets. Shirts and skins. President Obama is a phenomenal player at basketball for a president of the United States. But I think he's just mediocre for a black guy. Hey, what about bringing in Jackie Robinson? Only team with a black guy in it. That's not cheating?
A show including monologues, interviews, and sketch comedy, the show exemplified Norm's style of comedy perfectly: dry, razor-sharp, and undeniably hilarious. The show had incredible ratings and a very dedicated fan base. However, the show only lasted 1 season. This decision to cancel a seemingly successful show came as a surprise to many. It must be the curse of the Doors. I must say, for an old chunk of coal, this guy had a really lucrative acting career. Norm Macdonald has 3 comedy specials: Me Doing Stand-Up, Hitler's Dog, Gossip and Trickery, and Nothing Special. Before we discuss the comedy specials, I'd like to take a brief moment, as all moments are I suppose, and I want to talk about Norm's stand-up comedy style. I'll start off by reading Louis C.K.'s description of Norm Macdonald's comedy. I first saw Norm Macdonald on stage in 1988. I was 21 years old, and he came to headline a club in Boston where I had been doing stand-up for 3 years. Me and my friends had heard about him, so I went to check him out. Within 2 minutes, I was astonished by how goddamn funny he was. Just blown away. I laughed harder that night than I had in my life. I remember my comedian friends and I just sat and talked about him for hours after the show. I went back to see him 5 times during the week he was at the club. He instantly became my favorite comedian, and in 30 years since, he's never stumbled far from that rank. Every time I see or hear Norm, he's doing something new and better than the last time. He gives me a new favorite comedy bit. The last thing is that there is not a single other comedian like him. He falls into no genre or category, just comedian. I seriously fucking love Norm Macdonald. Please buy his book. He probably needs the cash. He's really bad with money. Louis C.K. Louis really nails what makes Norm so special. When you talk about other comedians, you can usually put them into a category. When it comes to one-liner comedians, you can name Jimmy Carr, Mitch Hedberg, Anthony Jeselnik, or if you talk about observational comedians, you can name George Carlin, Bill Hicks, Louis C.K., or Louis Black. These comedians are deemed similar because of the category their comedy falls under, but Norm Macdonald is simply an enigma. There's no other comedian that you can categorize him with. He's irreverent to the point where he basically invented his own niche of comedy, and it's a truly special thing. All three of Norm's specials are incredibly funny and brilliant. Today I will just be talking about me doing stand-up, undoubtedly one of the greatest comedian specials ever recorded. Norm opens this special and wastes no time before getting into material about death. He takes this incredibly grim topic and makes these observations about the way we fear our own death and how ridiculous it truly is. Within seconds, he's absolutely lighting up the crowd when the subject is something that all people find a bit troubling.
I think actually scientists should kind of look into that whole death thing because they seem to focus on diseases. And, I don't give a fuck about them because, the guy go, hey, we fixed your arthritis. And they go, I'm still going to die? They go, yeah.
He then goes on to joke about cancer.
But I'm pretty sure if the cancer dies, if you die, the cancer also dies at exactly the same time. So that, to me, is not a loss, that's a draw. That's a, you know what I mean? It's not like fucking the cancer's gonna jump up and go, I'm fucking Uncle Bert's wife. Where is he?
The news.
Now listen, man, I like the news. You guys like the news? I always watch the news, and I'll tell you something about the news. I don't understand it. But it's for some reason I watch it.
How he would murder a woman.
What I would do, and I would never, ever kill a lady in cold blood. I wouldn't. I know I say that now. I don't really know. I can't predict the future, but I don't believe
Alcoholism.
He has the disease of alcoholism. And he came to me, and he told me, and I like to look, I'm the kind of guy who likes to look at the bright side of things, So I told him, I said, Richie, it's true that you have a disease and everything, but I think you got the best one.
Tiger Woods.
That the world's greatest athlete over there, Tiger Woods, you're telling me that guy, that super handsome, charismatic dude, likes to lie down with ladies? I don't buy it. I don't buy that for 1 second.
And last, but certainly not least, O.J. Simpson.
As much as I was indignant about his acquittal, I'm equally indignant about his going to prison for stealing his fucking own shirts. I don't think that's fair.
I would go into greater detail about the jokes, but I don't want to ruin it for you. I'd recommend checking the special out yourself. The entire thing is available on Spotify for audio and YouTube. Norm demonstrates his ability to tackle taboo topics with some levels of observation, sarcasm, and irreverence that he has always been known for. This type of comedy is what made him such a unique comedic voice, and why he's so original in his act. If you'd like to watch the other two comedy specials, Nothing Special and Hitler's Dog Gossip and Trickery, they are available on Netflix, and you will definitely love them if you're a fan of anything Norm. We took a dive on Norm's unique style of stand-up comedy. However, when getting a better understanding of Norm's sense of humor, that's only one piece of the puzzle. Another thing that makes Norm Macdonald such an enigma is the way he acted around other people. There are some hilarious stories about Norm Macdonald that will give you an insight as to what makes him laugh and how he thinks. One of my favorite stories is a story of Norm Macdonald trolling some young comedians who were opening for him. Listen to this.
And so Norm was headlining, and I think there were 3 or 4 comics who were doing 5, maybe 8-minute sets. And at that time, it was all the material they had. They were new comics. And okay, I've polished off my set. I got these jokes. And now I'm going to go out with this guy who's a great headliner, and we're going to do this big corporate gig. And so at the gig, as they were starting, Norm off the top said, I'm just going to go out there and kind of warm up the crowd, do a little teaser, and then you guys do your sets and I'll come back. So Norm went up, and apparently did everyone else's material. Did all the, is this the story?
Oh
did
my
all their
God.
jokes. And what I loved is what I was told to me. They're like, first off, those are the only jokes we had. But the worst thing about it is Norm's jokes were better. Like our jokes were, he had 3 hours and he was going to do an hour on this show. So he was only doing it to fuck with them.
So Norm went up before his openers, stole their jokes, then they all had bad sets just for Norm to close the show and kill. On top of that, they rode in the same bus after the show. I mean, who the fuck does that? I don't know anyone else who would do that, but it's absolutely hilarious. Another hilarious story is the time Norm Macdonald hosted the YouTube Awards show with Jenny Slate and Kasim G, and just made a complete mockery of the entire thing. Here's a few of my favorite parts of it.
Joining us in the show before the show living room is host of Norm Macdonald Live on YouTube, the wonderful Norm Macdonald.
Yes, and Jenny, all the stars are here.
Do you want a microphone, Norm?
Yes. Is that my tree?
What a disaster.
Jenny, all the stars are here.
It's true.
Beardy Man, Claude Racine, Dax Flame, Betty Fine,
You got it.
and Raphael Fine. All the stars
You really keep up with all that
are
stuff.
here tonight. Oh, yes. Harley Morenstein is here.
We're joined by the talented trio called the Lonely Island.
Yeah,
Who
you know
will be
what I
on the
call
big.
them?
What do you call them?
I call them Sandberg and the other couple of fellas.
The Mind Squad.
See your face?
Oh, yeah, it's me with a huge fat fucking face.
Yeah, I didn't want to be the one to say it.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of trouble. My doctor, he said, he's not a very nice guy. He said, open your mouth and say oink.
Yeah, you need to get better insurance, Norm.
Insurance. He was calling me a fat pig.
Well, I mean, nobody's going to disagree with him.
Oh, Kasim.
I'm sorry, Norm. I've got an acid tongue.
You do. You're an acid-tongued Arab.
Talk to him. Talk to him right now. Talk to Barf.
Listen, Barfy Man 362.
All right.
No, you cannot rape my mother with a knife.
It's the biggest show in YouTube history, and Norm Macdonald shows up in a hoodie and sweatpants in the California heat and just starts going for the head right away. Fucking hilarious. I don't know whose idea it was to have a YouTube event hosted by Norm Macdonald, but it went so badly for them it reminded me of that tragedy.
Hey, for the 9th consecutive year, Nick, JetBlue Airlines ranked first for satisfaction among all North American airlines. But you know what ranked least in satisfaction? 9/11 Airlines. What a terrible name for an airline. It reminds me of that tragedy. Oh, 9/11. Yeah, don't laugh at 9/11 again.
One of the funniest stories about Norm Macdonald is the story Jim Brewer tells when he was touring with Norm and they did a clean comedy show in Iowa. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then holy shit, are you in for a treat.
We get to the gig and is packed. And they go, now listen, there's kids here and there's students and alum and the dean and all these people here. So
that's the worst.
They're like, yeah, clean. I get it. No worries. Norm goes up. I'm not even exaggerating. The first thing he says, he goes up, he goes,
I'm preparing. I'm like, this is going to launch my career. Are you kidding me? This is going to be huge. I'm going to be all...
He goes, fucking... Where the fuck are we? First person to even curse. Right? I went, oh, shit, he cursed. And he goes, so, if you're gay, would you rather be the ass guy or the dick guy? This is what he starts off with. So I go, Daryl, you gotta come see this. And he's going, and he won't stop. He's like, because if you...
Undoubtedly, one of the funniest Norm Macdonald stories of all time. This is yet another display of Norm's fearlessness, and the fact that he can just lean into an embarrassing moment with such pride that would tear apart 99% of other people. Patrice O'Neal would be proud. How about the time Norm Macdonald did the roast for Bob Saget and told inoffensive jokes from an old school joke book? Norm was told by the producers on Comedy Central that he should try and be as shocking as possible and that there were no lines. So Norm, being a master of misdirection, goes up and does this.
And Cloris Leachman is here. Cloris? Cloris, if people say you're over the hill, don't believe them. Why, you'll never be over the hill, not in the car you drive. Susie Essman, of course, is famous for being a vegetarian. Hey, she may be a vegetarian, but she's still full of baloney in my book.
What an absolute madman. There's so many great Norm stories in existence, but I will only share one more, and it's my absolute favorite. One time Artie was doing a theater gig for Norm in San Francisco, and I'll just let Artie tell the story.
Norm just loved torturing people, and he does it in the most brilliant way. Right. He comes up to me and goes, listen, man, we're in fucking San Francisco. No gay shit. And I go, all right. Well, if I played San Francisco before. He goes, nah, that's like you're at a club. There's a fucking theater, man. There's critics out there. Don't fuck me, man. No gay shit. And I go, all right, fine. So I go out 20 minutes, and I have 4 seconds at that point in my life without gays. So I get through the 20 minutes. I introduce Norm. Norm walks out, and I'm listening from the back. Before he says, good to be here, you're a great crowd, nice to be here, the first thing that comes out of his mouth, hey, how about that AIDS? He goes, I read all this bad shit about AIDS, but then I read that AIDS doesn't discriminate. And that's kind of nice.
I was howling laughing the first time I heard that story. It would seem that Norm has like a metal detector that allows him to sense what would make someone the most uncomfortable, and he goes right for whatever that is just to make himself laugh, and we're all just there to enjoy the ride as well. Things like this might devastate another comedian's career, but Norm uses it as a way to further build his audience around doing what he believes would be the most entertaining. It would seem Norm was trolling other people before the internet was even invented. If you think these stories are funny, I'd highly recommend checking out I'm Not Norm on YouTube. He posts all the content regarding Norm, and these stories, among many others, can be found there. Picture this. You've seen all Norm's content on TV, and you want more. You are foaming at the mouth looking for more. What if I told you there's a podcast that features Norm Macdonald and his Holocaust-denying sidekick, Adam Egget? You'd probably go down to the rope store and rickety stool store right away. Seriously though, that brings us to Norm Macdonald Live. These podcasts are hilarious. Additionally, there are episodes on Netflix titled Norm Macdonald Has a Show. However, a lot of fans of Norm claim these episodes simply do not raise a candle to the episodes that can be found on YouTube. Norm Macdonald Live is vintage Norm Macdonald with an additional element. Some fucking douchebag. Adam Egget, the booker of the world-famous Comedy Store, acts as Norm's sidekick in this podcast, and he takes the bullet a lot of times to allow Norm to make an incredibly funny point.
He says, I love this podcast. It was great to see Norm Macdonald back, and Super Dave was the perfect choice as first guest. Lose the douchebag.
He's talking about me.
Well, we don't know if he's talking about you.
He's clearly talking about me.
He is talking about you.
He will also be a punching bag for the guests that Norm brings on the show, and the guests on the show do not disappoint. The show usually runs the format of a regular podcast, except for towards the end of the show, Norm will pull out a stack of blue cards that all have jokes written on them, and they will read the jokes for the folks at home.
This is the section where we do jokes. Do you want to read one? Just read into that camera for the folks.
The first episode went live on March 26, 2013, with the guest being Super Dave Osborne. This episode was full of memorable moments. One of my favorite moments is when Adam asks Super Dave where he gets his ideas from.
Adam had a question he wanted to ask you about your comedy.
Yeah, I've been chomping at the bits to ask this one. I've been thinking about it all week. Norm told me to come up with some questions for you, and I've just been dying to know, where do you get your ideas from? Well, I mean...
This is a recurring bit from the Norm Macdonald Live episodes, and it's hilarious every single time. The context here is one time Norm was on Tom Green's show, and this dude asked Norm where he gets his ideas from, and Norm was simply dumbfounded by the retarded nature of that question.
Where do you get your material, your comic material? Is it through your imagination or real life situations that's happened?
That's an excellent question.
It is. It's a good one. It's almost like, now what inspired you to ask that question, sir?
Well, you know, I kind of think myself as being a comic as well. If you need some material, I can give you some right now.
I imagine there's several clips of Norm being asked this, but the Tom Green interview is the one that stuck out to me the most. As a result, Norm finds humor in this question, so now he tortures every one of his guests by feeding Adam this question and having him ask it to them.
Yeah, I've been dying to know, where do you get your ideas from? Norm
yeah,
made
you
me
know,
ask
that's
that.
a good.
No, I really, I've been watching you for years, and I've always been really curious. Where do you get your ideas from? I think it's been really a thorough interview. I always wanted to know where he got his ideas from, but I think
Never been asked that before.
Where do you get your ideas from?
Anyway, the Super Dave episode ended on a high note with Norm giving Adam and Dave some jokes to read. Upon seeing the content of the joke, Super Dave said this.
Do you understand that we're on the air?
Yeah. Oh, right.
Even so, Norm soldiered on and read the joke that really set off Super Dave.
Some gold-plated chains would make a nice retirement gift for a very, very good slave. Are you serious? Well, this was written. Are you serious? This was written years ago. Did you just write that? I didn't write it. Did you just say that? No, I read it, yes. You read that? It was written, obviously. Oh, my God almighty, I'm not part of this. No, it was written before. No, I'm not part of this. No, you can't read that.
And from there it only got worse. As I mentioned earlier, Norm seemed to have an internal metal detector that could just pick up on anything that made someone uncomfortable, and then for his own enjoyment, and sometimes the audience enjoyment, he would just lay into that topic. Another thing that made Norm's show stand out were his hilarious ad reads. The most iconic sponsorships Norm had were Man Great and Dollar Shave Club. These companies gave Norm a word track to follow, and he followed that while also making his own rendition of it.
For $1 a month, have all your shaving needs met? I mean, on your face?
Well, you can use it for anything.
Well, that's true.
Do I have to only use it on my face?
No, they have no rules here. They have no rules.
Then yeah.
Of course they have no rules. They send fucking razors to your house.
They can't be high quality razors for $1 a month.
They're the highest quality razors in the world. You can slit your wife's throat. What about the Man Great?
Is that like a genital cleanser?
No, my God. You can put chicken on this or steak. That's not that unique. No more dry meat. What do you think of that?
Good. You want your meat juicy.
Oh, come on now. Don't make it sound like a fucking fat, plumpy, delicious cock. There's more fucking facts about the Man Great than about Nick. Chicken, steak, has never tasted so good.
Absolutely hilarious. Every podcast has sponsors, but Norm made the ad read so absurd and off the rails that eventually he lost Man Great as a sponsor, and he didn't even fucking care.
That was our only sponsor.
Oh, yeah, and you lost.
Yeah, now we found out we lost Man Great as a sponsor. And then earlier today, I think we were told legally we can't say we lost them as a sponsor even.
Yeah, I think we were still waiting to find out if we were allowed to say that.
But anyways, that was Schwartz.
We lost them.
That was Nick Schwartz that fucked it all up.
This, among so many other moments, just made this podcast for comedy exceptionally different, and a show I can go back to consistently and laugh my ass off. The show aired its last episode on YouTube October 3rd, 2017 with Jim Carrey, and many clips and funny moments are still circulated by Norm fan channels on YouTube to this day. So it's safe to say that Norm Macdonald Live left a mark on the world of comedy that will not be forgotten anytime soon. David Letterman and Conan O'Brien have very different styles when hosting their late-night shows, and very different personalities. One thing they have in common is their love and admiration for Norm Macdonald, and that's for a good reason. Norm has made some of the most legendary late-night appearances to ever be seen on television. Many of these moments are still talked about by comedians today. A lot of comedians briefly tell the hosts of the show what they're going to talk about when the camera is rolling. This usually consists of some bits of material they really like, or some true stories they think people would really enjoy to hear. However, Norm was often very coy to reveal what he would talk about. And then when the cameras were rolling, he would tell a completely fake story with a punchline at the end that would waste everyone's time, but by the end of it you were laughing your ass off and wanting more.
I also love Norm Macdonald because he comes on and his stories are all invented. None of them are real. They're all old farmers' daughters jokes. And he pretends he'll come on. I'll say, "What's up, Norm?" He'll be like, the other day I was walking down the road and a pirate comes up to, I'm like, "What?" Yeah, a pirate comes along and he's got 3 pigs with him. One of them is wearing a hat, one's got a pipe, and then it's just...
This was the superpower that Norm had whenever he was on a late night show with any host, and Conan describes it in this way.
A complete waste of everybody's time that's absolutely delightful and hilarious.
He could take your time, completely waste it right before your eyes, and have you laughing all while he does it. It takes a tremendous amount of balls to waste someone's time so willy-nilly, but there's just something so electric about Norm's cadence and delivery when he's on late-night shows, not to mention the fact that he was always sharp as a tack with his sarcasm, dry delivery, and his hilariously smart-ass observations mannered in typical Norm Macdonald fashion. One of the most famous clips of Norm killing it with Conan was done on May 15th, 1997, when Norm was a guest along with Andy Richter and Courtney Thorne-Smith. Norm was always on fire, but his appearance stood out because he was going back and forth with Conan showing off his wit, and Conan continued to egg him on until Norm hit one of the greatest moments in late-night history. I'll let the clip speak for itself.
Why weren't you watching our show, pal?
Because I wasn't on it that night.
All right, no, stay. It's a Zeppelin. All right.
Are you talking about Melrose Place? No, because
You're the biggest ass I ever met. I love you for it. But what's the movie going to be called? Really?
I know what it's going to be called.
Yeah, what's that?
If it's got Carrot Top in it, you know what a good name for it would be?
What's that, Norm?
Box Office Poison.
She's in it.
What about my career?
Courtney Thorne-Smith, the girl sitting to your left, is in the movie.
I'm going to go see it for Courtney.
There's this movie coming out.
Yes.
Title undetermined at this point.
Chairman of the board.
Oh, all right. Do something with that, you freak.
I bet the board is spelled B-O-R-E-D.
Thank God we have the internet, so this legendary moment will live on forever. Another great moment was the time Norm told the moth joke. A lot of people argue that this was Norm at his very best on Late Night with Conan, and I really can't decide what I like more. The moth joke is a simple one-liner joke that Norm turned into a horrific story of a man's life crumbling mixed with Russian names from a Dostoevsky novel. I'm not going to show you the whole clip, but I'd highly recommend you go enlighten yourself and watch the Norm Macdonald moth joke in its entirety.
A moth goes into a podiatrist's office.
A moth goes into a podiatrist's office. Right?
You are correct. A moth goes into a podiatrist's office, and the podiatrist's office says, "What's the problem?" And the moth says, "What's the problem? Where do I begin, man?" He goes, "I go to work for Gregory Olinovich, and all day long I work." Honestly, Doc, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I don't even know if Gregory Olinovich knows.
Finally, Norm doesn't often get sentimental in his comedy. He tries to just focus on what he thinks is funniest, but there's been a few times where he's let it show. The final comedy set on David Letterman's Late Night Show was Norm Macdonald because there's no person more fitting for this spot based on Dave's admiration of Norm. Then, without a shadow of a doubt, Norm absolutely destroys. Then at the end, he takes a moment to sincerely thank Dave while also breaking down in tears because of the sheer gravity of the situation.
So anyways, I'd just like to say, I know that Mr. Letterman is not for the mawkish, and he has no truck for the sentimental, but if something is true, it is not sentimental, and I say in truth, I love you.
Oh, my God.
Very funny, Norm. And thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Norm Macdonald, ladies and gentlemen. That was very sweet, Norm. Good night, everybody.
Imagine growing up with a comedy hero, doing your late night debut on his show, and then being so funny you end up becoming one of his heroes, and then being asked to do the last ever stand-up set on his show before it ends. It's enough to make a grown man cry. Any artist with the heart would sob their eyes out at an opportunity like this. It's even more sentimental when we look at it again, knowing what we know now.
Get away, get away. I watched with them.
Well, you guys knew this part was coming. On September 14th, 2021, the world of comedy was shocked and saddened to find out that Norm Macdonald had lost his life to acute leukemia. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe O.J. Simpson changed his name that quickly to acute leukemia. Norm's death is certainly the saddest thing to happen in the month of September. Alright, I'll stop. But the day I found out about this news, I was genuinely heartbroken. I don't really care about a lot of celebrity deaths, but this one was different. Many comedians shared this reaction to Norm's death.
2 weeks ago, he texted me, "How are you? What are you doing? Are you doing stand-up?" And I answered him with, much too many words. And then I didn't hear back. And then last week, I got a text, and it just said, "I love you." And I didn't say much back. I just said, "I love you, Norm." And that was my last communication with him.
But when you're telling little one-liners, you're kidding me.
No! We just found out that Norm Macdonald passed away. Oh, my God. I love Norm Macdonald.
He's young. And there it goes.
I don't know what to say.
Me either. That was breaking news, but you'll know now when you listen to this when we recorded it.
Norm had been battling cancer privately for almost 10 years. He didn't tell anybody besides close friends and families because he didn't want him and his comedy to be viewed differently. And to me, that is just so damn precious. For over 30 years, Norm dedicated himself to the art of comedy and misdirecting his audience. He spent decades mastering this ability. You expect a vile and shocking joke, he gives you a silly joke. You ask him to lay off the OJ jokes, he gives you 30 of them back to back. You expect him to say something funny, and he makes a sincere and profound statement that rocks your entire world and warms your heart. Norm is a master of observation, timing, cadence, quick wit, and he used all these tools to become the greatest comedian to ever live. On top of all that, Norm is also just a deeply thoughtful human being with a heart of gold, and his energy would always light up the room. And he didn't have a fucking lighter, nothing like that, but he was just special. There's just no other way to put it. If you're sad the way I am, take this bit of advice from the man himself. Take all the love you have for Norm and his comedy and give it freely to all that you meet. Norm will look down upon each and every one of us and be proud. This has been Norm Macdonald, the greatest comedian to ever live. Hey everybody, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really wanted to make this video as good as it could be, and I think it turned out very well. And if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel to see more future documentaries, that'd be awesome, because I think I will make more videos like this in the future. I just wanted to make this video to really highlight what made Norm Macdonald so special to me and what I think makes him so special to other people. I'm a young stand-up comedian, and seeing a guy like that just go up there and do what I want to do one day and make people laugh in the way that he did, make people smile the way that he did, it's just a magical thing, and nobody can take that from, us. And it's just really cool to see. And like I said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, because in the beginning it was my little project, and now it belongs to you. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it. So once again, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God bless, and take care of yourselves.